Jeremiah 23, and I'm right back, part 3, and I'm going to finish reading. We were talking about the oppressor. I'll go up a little bit. We were talking about Micah. We were in Matthew Henry, and we were dealing with Micah 1 and 2. We're talking about usury, greed, and covenant. Now, let's see here. It says, where we last left off, but those oppressors care not how many, but they were taking lands, coveting lands, how many they empowers, so that they may but enrich themselves. No, if covetousness reigns in the heart, commonly compassion is banished from it. I had a dream of a volcano. I woke up, there was a volcano that was erupting in Africa. I noticed that a volcano also erupted in Iceland recently, and I believe one in Italy. This is what oppression, covetousness with capitalization, is well hit. And if you come against it, you're a socialist, a Marxist, whatever you are. But it's hit. I do policies, I do deals, all for the greedy of gain, no matter what the cost. Massive wars. This thing is going to explode with God's judgment. It already has the curse on it. The thinking of how I can screw my neighbor and get my money. And I'm not talking about screw, I'm talking about get as much as I can from them. Without fair trade, without a good deal. The justice of God, it says, commonly all compassion is banished from it. If any man love this world, the love of the Father is not in him. So the love of his neighbor is not in him. So the commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. Well, if I'm going to destroy everybody, let's look at Ethiopia. We've been talking about 2 million people. Half the nation was starving to death. While the dictator that overthrew the emperor in the 70s, 65, 70s, up in the 90s, when they finally caught up with the guy, 2 million, and he got away and went to Mozambique. They let him off the hook. But the trade, Russia came, gave them $13 billion, they built up their military. All they did was kill and conquer oppositions that felt it might not be fair, killed everybody and destroyed everybody, and all that disagreed. And in the end, they marched a parade out, a military parade, while people were starving to death, hiding from the world. And then when the world found out, floods of compassion came out for the Ethiopian people. We're talking about dictators worldwide, how they think. They only think about themselves. If you go to a church and the pastor is only concerned about himself with the money and never gives back, you might want to question, is he moving in the love of God? I don't care about his gift, and I don't care about the truth that comes out of his mouth. I see it in the love of God. God, the scripture says, if you see your brother have need, and you say, be born, be faith, have faith in God, notwithstanding, give him what is necessary to sustain his life. I'll dwell in the love of God. How are you dwelling in the love? That's the key. Because anybody can take truth and use it for gain, greedy gain, and capitalize and covet. So the love of his neighbor is not in him. The justice of God, contriving the evil, and some say, well, there's no need for social justice. That is a false word. I mean, God's justice is to sinners. The cover-up of the injustice, the lack of reparations for the injustice, the lack of acknowledging that there ever was an injustice. It's always in covetousness, capitalism, and oppression. That is that spewing out of the earth with mass destruction. That these 3 volcanoes, I believe, connect or speaking. The earth inside its core is speaking. It's vomiting out the wickedness which has been sold through covetous greed and oppression. The justice of God contriving the evil of punishment for sin. Therefore, this is Matthew Henry commentary on Micah 2:2. That judges between a man and man, and is an avenger of those that do wrong. Behold, against this family do I devise an evil, that is, against the whole kingdom. Building kingdoms, living lavish off the poor, just generally speaking, as a practice, and then it's acceptable. And if you can get away with it, you'll keep doing it. I don't hear preaching on oppression. Just like that volcano. It's quiet. But then one day, after that thing fills up, it explodes. Behold, against the family I do this, and I devise an evil, that is, against the whole kingdom, the house of Israel, and particularly those families in it that were cruel and oppressive. There it is again. They unjustly devise evil against their brethren, and God will justly devise evil against them. Infinite wisdom will so contrive the punishment of their sin that it shall be very sure, and such that cannot be avoided. And that is something that is just going to happen. It's going to happen. One day the volcano will come. Okay, now I'm going to read the commentary. It says, they oppress a man and his house. They rob and ruin those that have numerous families to maintain. Genocide. Minusing people. You know, and people have paid in the ministries, got in trouble financially. Maybe there was a disagreement, or maybe you don't think like the pastor does or the prophet. And they don't go and find that member that supported their ministry, because each member has a ministry, or give them back the money that they used to support that ministry. They don't look for them. They live in a palace, drive fancy cars, and can care less what happened to them. That's why Jeremiah 23:8 said, woe to them that scatter my sheep, and then won't even go find it. The stumbling block of property. I came out of a church that we paid the building off, and next thing you know, it's being foreclosed on. It brought a division. The vision was to win the souls. The souls got towed up after 20, 40,000 of them were. But it got towed up. Probably through covetousness. I'm not saying that's what happened. But greed, covetousness, capitalism, trying to capitalize off of the title that we burnt. And now the church is now no longer there. Just like people have covenant lands, and the original inhabitants are no longer there. We have the great exodus of people today, migrants, the Ethiopians who migrate from Ethiopia looking for work to go to Yemen. But when we look at Ethiopia under the dictatorship, with Russia giving them $13 billion in arms, we saw the disaster. The man was busy parading the parade of military equipment while his people were starving to death, literally. And we're talking 2 million minuses. Vain is the help of men. When they get caught up into covetousness, it's all over, bro. Destruction will be its fruit. They oppress a man and take away his heritage. They take away from men that which they have an unquestionable title to having received it from their ancestors. You know, what happened to the people that own property? Hilton Head Beach, different places were coveted in intimate domain. I can go over to Venezuela, the rulers there. I can go over to China. The evictions to build mass structure with the poor, taken away without giving them any. All you gotta do is go to China and look at it. Any compensation, get out. We're taking over your house because we want to build something here, skyscraper. That kind of thing. The lady jumps off the building and kills herself as the documentary came to a conclusion. The next day, after the documentary, they followed the lady around. The lady didn't have nowhere to go. Just like today. And then give them drugs and guns. Their ancestors, which they have built and trust to transmit it to their posterity. But those oppressors, all these people who should have had, if wealth comes through the housing distribution, with all the Jim Crow, all the redlining, it's all in America, it's all around the world. People have stuff that don't belong to them. Do you understand that? God knew what he was doing when he birthed everyone, every continent. He knew you'll have this, you can trade with that if that's what you want to do. Resources. The diamond fields in Africa. The corrupt leaders. And the poverty everywhere, even though the resources are there. In Germany, France, Belgium, and different people and players that got involved in Africa wouldn't even help them. The sugar plantations, not the plantations, but the factories, 200, but then when they left, there's only 2. They don't want them to produce their own. These are the oppressors, which one day, like that volcanoes, the judgment is about to burst forth. They empower so that they may but enrich themselves. If covetousness reigns in the heart, commonly all compassion is banished from it. And see, we will not. Deuteronomy 26, where they collected tithes and shared with the widow, the father, the stranger. 2 Corinthians 8 and 9. You see, that meets the needs of the saints, which was used, and this is not a doctrinal dogma. I'm saying, do our heart go towards our brother when their lights get turned out, when they don't have nowhere to go? Or do we tell them, have faith in God, keep time? Where is this in the church? Compassion is banished from it. And if any man love this world as the love of the Father, so the love of his neighbor is not in him. I can look at you, covet your 10%. I'm talking about the church now. And if you disappoint me in any kind of way, treat you like you don't exist. And if you leave, so what? And they contributed to building many pastors' houses, the one that left the ministries. Offended by whatever or disagreement, the point is, there's no thanks for that. Deserving, elitism, using privilege and opportunities, and our politicians. Come on now. So the love of his neighbor is not in it. Now I'm going to stop right there. Let me put this in. Mother of harlots. Okay. Put in Book of Revelation. Maybe it'll come up. Okay, the mother of harlots, the Bible says that they will judge the merchants well in the book of Revelation over her plagues that come in a day. And why is that? Because they couldn't trade no more. They couldn't do capitalization anymore. And the judgment that came was the plagues that came. So God, who judged them, we see the same judgment, similar judgment, that happened with Israel when they went into captivity. We see that when they went into captivity, they were there because of Micah 2:2, what we just read. It's called Revelation 17:5, and upon her forehead was written, Mystery Babylon, the great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Now that's pretty unique. Now in Revelation 17:5, the mother of harlots, when we look at that, it said that her judgments came in a day. Revelation 17:5. Israel's judgments came in a day. Babylon came upon Israel because of the practices that we read earlier. And what were those practices? Woe to them that devise iniquity and done evil upon their beds. They practice it because it's in the power of their hand. They covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man in his inheritance. And therefore thus saith the Lord, behold, I'm against this family I will devise evil, from which you shall not remove your necks. Now, destruction came to Israel. So, I'm going to read something from a book. It's called Social Problems. And it's by James A. Henson. Why do people have children in third world countries? Well, our ideas of the right number of children make sense for us, for our perspectives match our life situation. To superimpose our ideas on of other people of different culture, however, is to overlook their situation and their perspectives. To understand the behavior of any group, we must see things as they see them, including and perhaps especially behavior that appears irrational. Now here's what they use their kids for. Caring for the livestock, caring for the younger children, fetching water, caring for goats and livestock. Let's see here. Transplanting rice, harvesting rice, hoeing, digging, farming. They have kids to help out so that they can survive. And it's all come from oppression practices. The reason why I think I saw that volcano was because what is ever in the earth, whatever is being done, when you look at all the oppressions, if you've been paying attention to this series here, we've read from commentators that the men and women that prop in their heart to covet with greedy gain and use the vehicle of capitalization on it has, in my opinion, is coming to a full head, like those volcanoes. and it's covered. It's like a lid that's going to blow because of the oppression in the earth. Wars fought over coveting land. And it reaches a point where now it's about to spill over. Judgment will come because of these things. It is unescapable. If you think abortion is bad, many people get an abortion because they can't afford the kids. And I hate abortion. But oppression is the root cause of many things that we see today. It's not coincidence. Drugs and cocaine and heroin has flooded the poor. That's not by coincidence. Prisons are overflooded. Profits are being made from prison. That's oppression. Land was promised, never delivered. Book of Jude, making promises, but unable to perform them because of the greediness in the heart. Seeing a person have need in churches and the leaders turning away. Allowing ministers to come with the bribe, to keep telling them God's going to do it and give you a house and everything. Just keep paying money, yet they have palaces. And many people that pay are renting to this day. People in political positions to do something about oppression, like the drugs at the border, like the president that's current, vice president, wouldn't even look at the drugs at the border. Bribes. People want power. I'll do this, you do that. I'll give you arms, you can kill them all. We don't care what happens to the people. Just give us your resources. We'll make you rich. Satan said, all these things will I do. Give you if you bow down and worship. You have to bow to the oppressive system. And because it has been multiplied over and over and over, men of corrupt minds, there is nothing working. Democracy's not working. Okay? We've been free for what? To what? Pay the banks. And the banks get bailed out, but they'll evict you from your property if you lose your job. Free for what? To go more in debt. You get text messages constantly of, you need a loan, you need a loan. Especially if you have bad credit, you have to pay 3 times the amount. Just housing alone, you know. And we wonder why COVID-19 struck the earth. Or whatever else is coming. If the first chosen people went into slavery, bondage, captivity, because of oppression, what makes us think, we say we're Judeo-Christian, we won't go there. In all religions, they have coveted different things and went to war, thinking God wants, this is the way you do it. So we hate our neighbor and we destroy it. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. That is not going to happen. As I loved you, not going to happen. If your heart is cold as stone, you can care less what the people go through. Just bring them tithes and them offerings. That's how it affects the church. Making promises, political people that rise up, leaders, and never deliver, instead just plunder. Look what happened to Venezuela. Look what happened to Africa. Look what happened, because if you want to talk about democracy, it so-called went to Africa. The capitalists went to Africa to get the resources. And they left them for dead and took the wealth. It's sitting in banks right now who will loan you money at high interest. There's never enough. So God said, the mother of Babylon, the mother of harlots, in her, when the plagues came, the judgment of God struck her, and the merchants fell, the capitalists. Capitalization, oppression, usury for greater gain, and oppressive practices are all in the heart. Jeremiah 20.